everyone. This is the first video on my channel, so I'm super excited about that. So this is gonna be the first in a series of videos called "That Time in Rogue Trader When," or "That Time in Pathfinder When I do ones about Pathfinder. Basically, I'm gonna be telling you about my campaigns I run as a GM, which I think are super cool. So I don't know if you know this, but in the early 2010s, which we can say because it's a new decade, a company called Fantasy Flight Games entered a licensing agreement with Black Library, which does Warhammer 40k expanded universe lore novels, the Warhammer 40k expanded universe novels. And I love Warhammer 40k. I love the lore, basically. That was always the appeal for me, and I love the expanded universe novels. I was not so much on the game. I did have some Catachan soldiers that I bought and assembled. I never painted them, but I always loved the lore more, the stories, the history of the Imperium and all of that. And the game was always kind of just, okay, there's the battle, but why? But what's going on with that? And then I found out that Fantasy Flight Games made this RPG, like a real deal RPG, based in Warhammer 40k lore, which I was super excited about because I love the lore. A real deal RPG game where you could like play as characters and get really in depth in the plot and stuff. And I was super excited because I love the lore. So I'm on a lot of D&D forums where we talk about tabletop RPGs, mostly D&D, but other tabletop RPGs as well, and how cool it is to play and all the stuff we homebrew and what our character creation process is and stuff like that. So I was on, and one of the forums I was on had a channel called Find a Group, where people would post like, "Oh, I'm looking for a group to play. Is anyone available?" So I posted on the group. I was like, "Oh, I have this Warhammer 40k RPG that I was hoping to play. Does anyone else want to play?" Well, I managed to get a bunch of players, and we all had to find a time we could meet. And because of my work schedule, the only time really I could guarantee I was free was first thing in the morning. So we meet early first Thursday morning, and okay, this is the coolest part though. So we did character creation, right? And none of them knew much about the Warhammer 40k lore. So that was interesting. But we're gonna start the actual session on Friday, and I had my character start without a warrant of trade. So in a Warhammer 40k rogue trader, basically, is the name of the game, and it's about rogue traders. So what a rogue trader is someone who has what's called a warrant of trade, which basically legally allows them to go outside the imperial bounds and come back in and trade with um, aliens at some point, which is usually highly frowned on. It allows them to communicate with lost human civilizations who used to be who have not found out about the Imperium yet and bring them into the fold. It allows them to settle worlds on certain cases. It basically allows them to do pretty much anything. And it's really powerful document, and it's hereditary too. So most of the time, rogue traders have them is from you get them based on from their parents or grandparents or great grandparents, and someone did something useful and they got this warrant of trade, and now all the descendants have them too. So it's that kind of thing. I did not start my players off with a warrant of trade, even though we're playing rogue trader, because I was gonna have them earn their warrant of trade. So okay, so we did character creation. This is the fun part. And one of the characters in this game are based on what's called career paths, which is um, uh, basically like classes in a D&D or other similar RPGs. And they one of them had the class of rogue trader, which is the name of the game. So they were the captain of the ship, and I was like, okay, so you're the captain of a trading vessel, and the others were members of the crew, and they are going to have to cut a deal with the Inquisition, and because of certain things. So two of the players actually rolled up characters with mutations, which, if you know anything about Warhammer 40k lore, you know that mutation is not looked highly upon in the Imperium of Man. It is usually it goes so far as to say that the destroy the heretic and kill the alien and fear the psyker are basically the tenets of how the imperial citizens live their lives, and that's because mutation often, but not always, means contact with the warp, which is the immaterium, the realm It's a secondary realm that's composed entirely of thought, and yeah. But the problem with that is that everyone's darkest, deepest, uh, most evil impulses are manifest there and tend to take over. So they become demons and the lords of chaos, and the embodiment of pure evil is just kind of out there, hoping to, you know, feed on human souls, and can enter real space through people who have psychic powers, but psychic powers are absolutely necessary to do certain things in the Imperium, so it's a delicate balance. But one of our players actually has psychic powers, which is kind of cool. That was one of his mutations. He also has other mutations, but the point is, so I was like, okay. And the way you create characters in Rogue Trader is you do what's called an origin path, and it gives you a bunch of steps on how your character got to where they are. And at each stage, you get certain perks and disadvantages that change the way your character is played, but also give you ideas for backstory. And one of our captain's origin path points was Zealot. So I was like, okay, you have managed to convince the local Inquisitor that, you know, you got called out for having a mutant on your crew, and you basically managed to convince the Inquisitor that your crewmates were good, emperor-fearing citizens of the Imperium, and that just because they were mutants did not mean they were evil, and that you were keeping an eye on them. And the Inquisitor was kind of like, okay, but they now owe the Inquisitor big time. So what happened was, I have this planet called Renthok that I made that I love. I'm super excited. I'll do another video on Renthok. But they are the High General of Renthok, from Renthok, who had become part of High Command, actually captured a pict of the Inquisitor in bed with an Eldar prostitute. So, that being the case, the Inquisitor kind of was like, okay. And the High General's brother was on a ship that disappeared in the warp and has not been heard from since. So she wants the Inquisitor to look into it. The Inquisitor is like, well, you have a picture of me with an Eldar prostitute, so I kind of have to do what you say. But these people owe me big time, so I'll get them to investigate. And basically, I'm hoping that they will earn their warrant of trade. If they don't, if they fail to do what the Inquisitor says, or the mission gets botched, there will be other opportunities for them to earn a warrant of trade, because I kind of want them to have it as part of the game. But I'm, so I'm not cruel. But so there will be a chance for them to earn a warrant of trade. But this is how they're going to earn it, and I'm super excited. But but the origin for the story, like we have the captain, who's Zealot from an Imperial world, so kind of whatever, but from a fairly high class but not noble family, and she's got you know background in zealotry, and uh, has been chased down by a vendetta, and is generally doing pretty okay, though, because she managed to get the ship from a rogue trader who was a bastard child of a forgotten house who sold her the ship, and the Inquisitor kind of facilitated that. So that was actually a big part of that. We have that. That's our captain. We have one of our arch militant, that's the career path, who is an ex from a hive world, but is basically came from a crime family and did not like the fact that they were a crime family and felt guilty about all the bad things he was doing, so he ran off and ended up serving on a ship, and one ship led to another, and ended up now working for this captain. You've got another one whose career path was Voidmaster, who was basically came with the ship, was press ganged by the previous captain after a warp accident killed his parents, and now is living here. He's several mutations, huge freaking teeth, eats people. I mean, and is a psyker, and the only astropath aboard, which is actually very important to how Imperial ships function if you're in any way familiar with Warhammer 40k lore. And so that, and then there's the Seneschal, I believe that's how you pronounce that, who is a from a hive world, and basically got her entire crew butchered by Xenos, and then managed to be the only one escaping, and has since tried to find them, but it has failed, and is just like, okay, and is now working on this ship with this captain, and they run local trade routes between several systems, and but they're about to go further. I'm so excited. I'll update you on their whole uh their thing more, but I just really wanted to speak about this because it's so cool, and we are finally getting started the campaign later this week. So I will do an update video on what happens during the first session, but it's gonna be super cool. And love you guys. Thanks for listening. Peace out.